Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Black alert.
We made this.
Black alert.
Hello and welcome to We Are Starfleet, the We Made This podcast, Star Trek podcast. I guess now that covers maybe the original series era, we've been branching out, I suppose. I'm your acting captain, Craig McKenzie, hosting for the 6th episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Joining me is my guest who I've just beamed off a shuttle that's blowing up. No one ever came on shuttles. It's Kurt North. Welcome.
Hello. I've travelled into the past from Make It So, because I think the Make It So podcast is going to look at some of the 90s Berman era stuff in the near future. That might be a bit of an exclusive on this show. Seeing that We Are Starfleet are doing the stuff from the Discovery, Kirk, Pike era. So yeah, I've travelled back in time, Craig. How are you?
I'm good. I haven't travelled back in time. I'm stuck in the 23rd century, stuck in my own time. But eventually, the two shows will essentially just meet in the middle. Eventually they'll just plug that gap that exists between the undiscovered country and the start of the next generation. Or the first 5 minutes of generations, I suppose. That's the latest that you see in the 23rd century, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we could talk about episodes where Deep Space Nine go back in time to Tribulations.
Yeah.
Stuff like that we could do. So there'll be crossover opportunities.
The Voyager episode with Sulu in it as well.
Yeah, that's true, yeah, absolutely.
We could do all that. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the 6th episode of Strange New Worlds. But before we do that, you haven't been here before, so what are you thinking of Strange New Worlds so far, now that we're more than halfway through the season? 60% of it is now done.
I'm glad I've came in at this point, because I think had I come in 2 or 3 episodes ago, I might have had a slightly different take on the show. The first couple of episodes for me were fine. I enjoyed them. They were good. But I did feel they were a bit kind of mundane in some areas and they were quite forgettable. But once we get to Memento Mori, I think the episodes kind of start to click in, and that includes going back and looking back at the first couple of episodes as well. So I'm liking, and which is what I really wanted from Strange New Worlds, was that yes, we get episodic stuff, but we get things that continue on from a thematic or a character perspective. So likes of Lan getting her thing from the Gorn stuff that she had to do with the Memento Mori, for example, is really good. Doctor Remember as well in this episode works really well because it's continuing on that story, and that's the kind of thing I really wanted the show to drill down into. So the fact that we are now 60% through the show and they are starting to show me things like that, I've got a new kind of affinity for it. And I think that going back maybe to watch the first 2 episodes, I might have been not necessarily being harsh on it, but I wasn't really connecting with it until recently. For me, it's still not quite there from an enjoyable perspective, in that I don't think it's groundbreaking Star Trek television, but at the same time I do think the season as a whole has been consistently solid. So I think that the show itself has actually been really interesting to have this kind of amalgamation of old stuff with new, and as I say, this character based stuff permeate the season. So yeah, overall, I'm enjoying the show so far.
I do agree that it's not groundbreaking Star Trek, but it's almost rediscovering itself in a way, I think. Getting back to the basics of what the franchise is, rather than, let's say, Discovery and Picard branching out and trying to do different things. So Discovery flirting with the whole arc-based storytelling thing and doing that to varying degrees of success, and Picard doing whatever that show was doing. I still don't really know what that show was doing, but that was trying something a bit different. Whereas this is, here's your traditional Star Trek, and we're going to, I guess, rediscover how we do that, but in a modern context. So I don't think this should be accepted as, yeah, this is it, we've nailed it. I think they need to build on this, but I think that's a good starting point. As in, we'll just get our feet wet with these episodic stories and see how we can do arc-based storytelling. The last one I was on was episode 3, which at that point for me was the weakest episode of the season. Didn't mean it was bad, it was just for me the weakest episode of the season. Up until this point, I would say the 5th episode for me was the weakest episode, because I just didn't gel with its attempts at comedy. I thought the body switching antics were pretty tiresome and weren't needed, really, actually. You could have told the story without them. And I was disappointed that Lan and Una's fracture in their friendship wasn't brought up after the third episode.
Yeah, that is something that I noticed myself, because I've kind of latched onto Lan a little bit now with Memento Mori. I said on my Twitter this week, which will be a couple of weeks ago when this comes to air, that she's now my MVP. I actually really like it. I really like the standoffish attitude of her, and I love what they did with her in that episode. The only issue that I've got, and this goes back to what I was saying about the character-based arcs, is that it seems to be, all right, we'll talk about genetic manipulation and we'll talk about what happened in episode 3 and then completely forget it. Well, can we not have more of that stretching through the season a little bit? A bit more fraction between the two of them and them trying to rebuild a friendship, because we don't know what they've had before the show began. But at the same time, we're not really getting any deeper aspect other than, I didn't like your Illyria, I don't like this, I don't like that. And then next week we're going to have a bit of a laugh together on a spaceship and shoot each other and go on a bow of a ship and whatever. Yeah, it felt a bit kind of forced that way. And I would agree episode 5 was quite weak in that regard. I liked bits of it, and I think that's particularly where I stand with a lot of these episodes. I like bits of each episode, and I think that you're right, episode 3 and episode 5 are probably my weakest as well.
Yeah, if you're going to do character development that carries between episodes, and some of it does, but the fact that some of it doesn't, I know these are written by different writers at different times and things, so it could be that whoever wrote episode 5 just didn't get the memo on, oh yeah, they had a bit of a tiff in episode 3, so you need to work that into their conversations.
You'd have thought you would have had a producer looking at that,
You'd think so,
person.
yeah.
I mean, you'd have thought you'd have like a showrunner that just goes, right, this is the episode, send that episode in to us, and then we will direct you to saying, well, this happened in episode 2, and we're working towards their central arc by the end of episode 8. That you'd have thought they would have had more of a show-running aspect to it. So I'll be surprised if they don't really do that as much.
Yeah, let's see how it goes, I suppose. There's no real hint of that here, although this does follow up on a particular episode or a particular event in a previous episode. So we'll just talk about the episode we're supposed to talk about. This one has a bit of a mouthy title, which immediately reminded me of an original series thing. Lift Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach. The original series would often have quite long titles here. Not safe for social media posting this title. It is 6 words. It's too long.
I'm going to test you now. What's that in initial form then for the hashtag?
LUWSCR.
Okay.
It's called that. And Pike comes across an old flame blast from the past that he rescued some years ago, who he now rescues again. And there's some weird stuff going on a planet with a child that needs to ascend to some position of power, and a standoffish, not quite xenophobic, but insular-ish alien race. Again, very original series. You encounter these kinds of things a lot. What did you think of this episode? High-level thoughts?
High level, certainly some of the themes that permeate through the episode work really well. I thought the back end of the episode was better than the first half. The first half itself felt a little bit of a, not mystery box, but a little bit of a mystery. And I enjoyed it for that, but some of it was just going through the motions in how I felt about that. But at the same time, the episode itself, as I say, has some interesting discussion points to have around what the people on the planet were doing, and it's kind of reflection on the Doctor and also some of the stuff with regards to Pike as well. So I thought it was really interesting ending. I might be wrong, but it's quite unusual for a Star Trek episode to end in that way. I would say that overall I'd give it a solid 7 out of 10. I just felt like the second half was a little bit better than the first.
So I think this is the weakest episode of the season so far.
Okay.
As I go through the season, it's like, okay, maybe this will be the worst episode of the season. And then got to episode 5. And okay, I didn't like it this as much as I liked episode 3, and that was the worst episode of the season. No, it's this one. This is the worst episode of the season. I feel like it's very unfocused in storytelling. The conflicts it brings up, it doesn't go into enough detail on them. It's not really sure what it's doing with the characters outside of Mbenga, who has the most to do, but the others, not so much. We're getting some repetition on some things that they really need to shut up about, because I'm getting annoyed at the constant bringing up of certain things, which we'll definitely get to. The ending, yeah, I liked it, although, again, I don't think it fully commits to its ending. And I don't think it fully commits to its commentary, because it is definitely saying something. Again, we'll get to that. I'm always promising that. I'll tease something, and it's like, we'll get to that later in the episode, don't worry about it. It delivers a bit of half-baked commentary on what it's trying to say, which is always annoying to me because it's, no, that's interesting. Now you've got me. Come on, go further.
Yeah,
Instead
okay.
of, all right, we'll just accept that and back to the ship and move on. It's almost like an original series episode where Kirk shows up and says, I've decided your society's stupid and I'm going to fix it. But that doesn't really happen here. It's just left, isn't it?
Yeah, and to be fair, that's kind of what I like about it, but we'll get there.
Oh, no, I don't hate the idea. I just wish they'd done something with
Yeah.
it. I wish they'd said something about it, because we've had a lot of chat about, or maybe not a lot of chat, but a lot of examples of where the Prime Directive could be discussed this season, where they don't actually discuss it. They just leave it there. And this is one where the Prime Directive should definitely be brought up. They kind of gloss over it early on in the episode where it's, well, they attacked us, so now we're involved. We're allowed to be involved because they attacked us. That's it. Case closed. and yeah, fair enough. I don't know how the regulations work. They change episode to episode, it seems.
Yeah, we will talk about that because I think a lot of that is in some ways what I like, but also in what you're saying, I think there was room for extra thoughts and ideas behind that and whether or not we could have delved deeper and maybe have not gone so hard in the first half of it being a bit of a mystery and actually get some of the mystery out of the way. But yeah, as I say, it's going to be interesting, bearing in mind that I think this is one of the stronger ones of the season and you think it's the weakest. So it's a nice dichotomy to
A bit of
have.
balance to the Force, to quote another franchise.
Yeah, interesting. Because there is some Star Wars-esque stuff happening
Kind of, yeah.
in this as well, with floating planets and stuff, but we'll see.
So let's dive a bit deeper. I think we should start with Uhura and Lan, because that's something of a through line, or the episode wants it to be, but it's not really that. I quite like the idea of picking up with Uhura just learning a new department every episode, or almost every episode.
Yeah.
They haven't really done much with it. It was more of an excuse for her to sit down with Hemmer in the 4th episode to understand what he's all about, rather than learning anything about engineering as such. She presses some buttons and whatever. And this one, it's with security, and in theory it should tell you a bit more about Lan, but I don't think we learn anything more about her than we already know, other than our lack of protocol side of it, I guess.
Well, the thing I picked up with this, it's becoming apparent to me that I think in the past we will have got this, but there is a lot of, we're going to bend the rules here in the show. You get the 3rd episode when we find out the actual species that number 1 is. And it's, we'll talk to Starfleet about that at another day. Let's just park that for a bit. And you get Lan here, rule number 6 or whatever rule it was. I didn't catch which rule it was, but bend the rules. So I'm not going to put this through the Starfleet's computer, but we're going to give that to Uhura. But then it obviously becomes a narrative choice to get around certain things. But it is interesting how already we're seeing quite a lot of the crew that kind of bend the rules to their will when they need to. That's what I took from it when I first watched this. And it is interesting. And Lan, as I say, is becoming my MVP. She's very matter of fact. And I quite like that, even to the point where Kirk came up and he said something along the lines of, I'm conflict verse or something, which I thought was a nice little touch. But yeah, as you say, talking about Uhura and her going through the cadet cycle rotation, I thought it's a really interesting thing to do, really. I know that in my management structure, sometimes that we might get somebody in that's new, that's the high-end manager, and they'll come around and actually go around each of the sites or each of the departments to get a feel for it. And we've done that sort of thing before with various different new starters and things. So it's certainly something that people do. But yeah, Lan on this particular thing, I think was only to do that, was only to show her methodology of how she goes around things, that she has these rules, that she's very dedicated to her job. We've had a little bit of that in the previous episode with the way that they are following the rules and learning to break the rules was last episode. So maybe it's a bit of a continuation from that potentially. But I do find it fascinating that these rule number, like rules of acquisition, isn't it really? It's her own set of rules. I do find that fascinating that she works in a methodical way, because that's something that in my mindset, the way my mind works, I compartmentalize a lot. And I think that's probably why I see myself in Lan a lot, because when I'm at work, I very rarely talk about stuff at home or even about the podcasts I'm on and stuff like that. But when I'm off work, it's a different mindset for me. So I think that's probably where I'm attracted to Lan and Lan's character in that way, because it is that compartmentalization, and those rules, for example, are all made up, but they're hers and people know where people stand with her.
Yeah, it reminded me a bit more of the Robin Leffler character, Leffler's Laws from the game, the weird stupid iGame thing with the cones. that immediately struck me on that. And using Uhura as the sounding board for most of the characters is an interesting idea. The fact that she just teams up with someone and you get a bit of character back and forth there. In the 2 examples we've had of that with Hemmer and Lan, it's more about getting to know the other person rather than Uhura, which has worked. Although in this one, again, we've already had quite a lot of Lan. She had quite a bit of character development in the first episode and in the fourth episode. So could she not have hung around with Ortegas for an episode? Because we haven't seen anything of her yet, really.
That's true. I'm sure that we will.
Yeah, maybe it'll happen. But every episode I'm like, all right, we know that she's a good pilot and that she's good friends with Chapel, but that's it. Really not much else. Their dynamic was good. I liked the way that they bounced off each other. As you say, Lan's very cautious and no nonsense, although she has a bit of flexibility when it comes to the rules a bit, and she knows when to bend the rules. And I guess she understands that Pike appreciates a bit of rule bending now and again when it gets results, because he doesn't necessarily care about following protocol when it's just going to slow things down, because they reference that if we put this through official channels, it will take weeks, whereas you can get me the answer in a few hours.
Yeah, exactly. If every other procedural cop drama would do that, instead of going and send off to the FBI labs and stuff and it's back within 2 hours, it doesn't work like that, folks.
Real life, it takes weeks and it's inconclusive at best.
Yeah, exactly.
I also liked that she was a tough but encouraging teacher. You present it to the captain, it's your work. I'm not taking credit for your work, as long as you're confident in your findings. And the bit where she said, so you did the bare minimum of what I asked you. And she's like, no, I did way more than you asked me. Here's all the stuff that I've done. You're going to spend hours looking over all this stuff. Really like that. Uhura doesn't suffer any fools. She doesn't let anybody walk over her. She doesn't let anybody bring her down or doubt her ability. She's like, no, I went overboard here.
Yeah, and it was the surprise of Lan as well. The way that Lan, as you say, was like, you can imagine another cadet saying the headline and that's it.
Yeah.
But she had stuff to back up. It was like, is that all you've got? But, well, no, I've got this stuff that I need to work out.
Yeah.
But I've worked out the genesis of the language, and it can only have come from this planet, which I thought was really interesting and really good that she has the depth behind that. And wasn't there one bit a little bit later on as well, where she's almost a little bit surprised in what she says, I think, to the captain? There's a moment, I'm not quite sure what that was now, but there was something, it was kind of like a bit, whoa, hang on a second, where did that come from?
Was it the bit where she was accused of being wrong by whoever it was, and then Lan says, no, she's just presenting the evidence and following it to its logical conclusions. So, again, tough but fair. Yeah. And she will stand up for people under her command and things. And I think with Uhura, they're doing similar to what they did with Tilly in Discovery, but they're doing it a bit better. Not that I don't like Tilly, but she is Tilly, but at a lower level of intensity, which works better for me, because I did find Tilly quite aggravating early on in Discovery sometimes because of just how much of her there was in terms of her personality. I do love the character, and I think she got more measured as even the first season went on, but early on this is a bit much. Tone it down. And then they did. But with Uhura, it's about the right level, I think. Her enthusiasm's still there, but she's not shouting about it and stuff. So they've brought in a bit of that Starfleet professionalism into this show, which I quite enjoy.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. I think similar to what you're saying about the very nature of the way that Uhura is being dealt with at the moment, it is designed for her to be the audience surrogate.
Yeah.
So you're bouncing off people. The Hemmer thing last week, was it last week or the week before?
The fourth episode, yeah.
Fourth episode, yeah, where you've got the broken hand and her having to deal with that. You're getting a lot from Hemmer on that one, and it's the same with this as well. So I think that she is being treated as very much the audience surrogate, which is great.
Yeah, and those two sort of connect the different character plots because they dip in and out of most of them. They don't really get involved in the Mbenga thing, but certainly with the main plot, they dip in and out of that, so it works well. From a structural point of view, definitely good to see.
Yeah.
The other one I've got a bit of notes on is Pike, and I haven't really caught the name. I feel like they pronounced it differently every time they said it. Either Alora or Allura, one of the two, or maybe something else.
Oh, Laura. Yeah. I got Laura at one point.
There was definitely an A at the beginning. There was like an A sound somewhere.
It was an A or an U, wasn't it? It was Ulura, Ulula.
Yeah.
Laura. It's difficult. We get screeners and they don't give you the cast, and we're not quite sure.
They don't tell us who's in this thing and who they're playing and stuff like that. So I end up writing my draft reviews and I put Pike and name.
Yeah.
I'll figure it out later. When I get the actual episode, I'll turn the subtitles on and figure it all out.
That is the one thing I'm really struggling with, actually, is not having subtitles. I've played in a band for 25 years, recently retired from doing it full-time. Well, not full-time, but as a main side project, which I used to go out every single Friday, Saturday night and play. And I haven't got the best ears in the world anymore. So on occasion, especially if I'm going to review something or talk about something in this kind of realm, I tend to put the subtitles on, but the screeners don't have subtitles on. So it's really frustrating. I did it a lot and make it so I had to keep rewinding and what are they saying? And I was really struggling, and I am struggling a little bit with the screeners that I've watched for Strange New Worlds as well. So I'm missing the accessibility, unfortunately, of my numerous years of being next to a very loud drummer.
If you're listening, Paramount, more accessibility options on your screeners, that'd be
exactly
very useful. But never mind. So Allura, whatever. I'm just going to call her Allura. We'll go with that. That's the name I'm
that's fine by me.
pitching. Pike rescued her many years ago when he was a lieutenant, and coincidentally rescues her again when he's now a captain. And you get some chat about the nature of the relationship back then, which didn't seem to be much. They talked about how he was hitting on her at the time, but it doesn't seem like anything happened. And then they just parted ways, and then they come together and have this freak accident or freak attack. Space is supposed to be really big, but they just bump into each other. I thought this was fine. They had really good chemistry, but I don't think they did enough with the relationship as such. And it was just another excuse for him to bring up, oh yeah, I'm going to die or something in 10 years, which he seems to never shut up about, despite the fact that talking about it is under penalty of treason.
Yeah, I actually forgot that. The problem that I have with the Pike storyline, it doesn't really go anywhere, bar he's someone that he's met in the past. He obviously has an affection for her, and a fundamental belief that she has really interferes with the way that he perceives her. But I don't feel like there was anything really that was any deeper than that. There was elements, obviously, like he's seeking some kind of solace, and well, we know what happens to him in the end, but he's seeking that kind of solace, and he started talking about the 10 years and things. So I understand all of that, but from a perspective of, right, so you've gone from, you're the investigator effectively, he's just the one that's investigating the story and to get to the end of that act, and that's what breaks down the communication between the two of them, is that she has a fundamental belief that he cannot reconcile, and that seems to be it. And it seems like there isn't enough for me to really latch onto that, and I wish there was some more. That is the weakest part of their relationship. It seems very surface level. The chemistry's nice. I did think the chemistry was good between the two of them, but it seemed very standard and just a surface level. That's the way I probably would perceive it.
Yeah, I'd agree. And giving them hope in the way that maybe our doctors can do something about you when this thing happens to you. It's not something I mentioned on the previous podcast because it wasn't relevant, but it's something that's become more apparent to me as the season has progressed, is I think Pike having detailed information about when his accident occurs and how it occurs and exactly who he saves and whatever else is a mistake, because the impression I got from the Discovery episode is that he saw his endpoint, but he wouldn't get the detail. He just sees it. He just sees what happens to him and doesn't know when that is. And it's much better if he doesn't know when it is, because that means he still has to tread carefully, because it could be any day now. It could be tomorrow, it could be next week, it could be 10 years from now, who knows? And that's something that really stood out to me during the 4th episode. Fair enough, he doesn't know that the ship and crew will be okay, but he knows he will. So he knows that in some level, a decision that he makes will be the right one, at least for him. So they should either play with that or ignore it, because it's really annoying that anytime he's in a situation, he's not thinking about the fact that, I know I'll be okay.
What I'm hoping that they will do, and I really like that part of episode 4 where they were going into the redshift stuff and the kind of interstellar stuff like that, which was really good. But I need to see at some point before the end of the season them really pulling him up on it, going, you keep putting us in danger. Stop doing that. That's from a perspective of you're becoming reckless. I'm hoping that they actually will kind of look at that and go, Pike is aware of certain things. He's aware that obviously in 10 years he's going to go, number one is the one to pull him up on it and to say, stop being reckless with the crew and you're losing your mind, and perspective of the job you've got to do at hand right now. Yes, there will be subconsciously and consciously things that he'll do because of his knowledge. I can forgive certain things with the story, and we know his future, but it's what he does in the moment that's the most crucial thing. And by putting other people in danger or being reckless, that he might get someone killed, which he doesn't know. So I really hope that they do go down that route with him, that they will have this kind of reckless attitude and that someone really has that argumentative discussion with him and pulls him to one side and saying, you just can't do this. So hopefully that will happen.
Yeah, I kind of doubt it though, because he isn't behaving like he knows how things turn out, at least for him. He's behaving normally, he's making decisions in the moment, which is fine. But I think them just saying that he knows the exact date and time and who's there and where he is and everything about that is a mistake, because there was a great opportunity in the 4th episode to create a similar scenario and have him think, oh God, is this the day? Is this when it happens? And then it isn't.
Yeah.
You only get away with one fake out on that, but that's when to do it, I suppose. But they can't do that now because he knows everything about it. He knows when it is, where it is, as I say, who's there, and so on. And now he's getting a bit of hope because of the medical science there, and them continuing to bring it up as if it's something that he could possibly prevent or deal with in some way is kind of frustrating. It won't be frustrating for people that haven't seen The Menagerie.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18 plus.
Because they'll think, oh yeah, maybe he can change his fate. But we're sitting there having seen The Menagerie, or at least being aware of it, thinking, nah, this is a waste of time.
But even so, you see the recap in Discovery as well. So even if you like new Trek and you Discovery onwards, you're still going to know it. So it's not as if it's not been brought up in Discovery, is it?
Well, you only see the Cage recap in Discovery. You don't see the Menagerie recap.
Of course you don't.
So he finds out he's going to be in the chair, but he doesn't find out that he gets a happy-ish ending where he gets to go live in a fantasy realm and Talos 4 and live out his days there, to happily just being manipulated into seeing little fantasy things. So he doesn't know that, but he's been given a bit of hope here. So they just keep bringing it up, and I'm annoyed that they keep bringing it up because I don't want it to continue to be brought up. I just want to forget about it.
That's fair.
But yeah, the plot, which is centred around those two. I did like when they beamed Alora aboard, and number one was just giving him knowing glances, thinking, I know what's going on here. I know what this is. She just stays professional throughout it. She doesn't mock him for it. She just has a quiet little chuckle to herself. That was a nice little touch.
Yeah, it was. It doesn't all have to be argumentative or anything like that, does it? It was nice that she does have that kind of stoic nature to her, and I'm really appreciating that from her, actually. Yeah.
She knows how to have a little bit of fun with herself, or she knows Pike well enough to read the room, and she understands what's happening there. It's a nice little bit. That's really all you see from her in this episode, apart from when she threatens Gamal, or whatever his name is.
Oh, was that
when he's in the brig?
So Gamal's the doctor. That was when they were in the brig. So that in itself was interesting. I know that we'll talk about that shortly. But yeah, there wasn't much more with number one. And it's interesting how they are doing these character pieces throughout the show, which is intriguing in itself.
But the plot involves a child, a very important child, who turns out is going to get plugged into...
Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Some machine that keeps the cities floating or something like that. I don't know why you need to plug a child in to do that. Something to do with his healing nanites or whatever it is. I don't know. They don't really explain it very well. They do a good job of setting up why the loss is tragic, other than obviously it's a child. That's a tragic thing. But they spend a lot of time going, look at how intelligent this young kid is. Look how full of life he is. And look how keen his mind is and how curious he is. And he's just been prepared as a sacrifice, really, which is a bit of a barbaric ritual that this supposedly enlightened society have, which is interesting, but they don't really make it interesting because it just comes out of nowhere towards the end. And yeah, so this is what we do. We groom a child and then plug them into this thing every few years, and that keeps the cities floating for some reason.
Yeah, and I think the kind of prodigy child aspect was my most interesting part of the episode, actually. And I know I'll kind of go off piece a little bit here, but the very fact that he's super intelligent, I know, with all the subspace stuff that he talks about with Spock, and he's able to work out the situation which happened with Dr. Member, really, for me, kind of narrows down what's happening with the Doctor, because it's kind of saying he's got this life to lead and could become the next prodigy. Actually, to be fair, and it should have gone maybe a bit more on this route, this could be the person who actually works out how to not do it this way and do it a different way, because he is that super intelligent. But for me, it kind of reflects what's happening with the Doctor, and especially, and I think the key thing for me in this episode was when the Doctor brings his daughter and they reread a passage from the book, and he hasn't really got enough time to reread the passage from the book, so her growth, her life is being stinted by the very nature that he's trying to save her in the long term. But he's losing time constantly because he's not letting her live right now. And I just find that really fascinating, that you've got this person who's in the pattern buffer whose life is close to the end, and he's trying to keep her alive and trying to find the cure for her. But through the thing that he's actually need those little touches where he's speaking to her, reading the book and things, that she's not being given a life. And it's the same what happens in this episode. It's when Kia goes and takes her out the pattern buffer and she's having a good time and stuff. It's done really nicely, because it's not done in a way that you would have normal TV shows do it, where, no, get back in there, you need to be back in the pattern buffer. It's done in a way of he's really humble, he's really empathetic to the situation, but at the same time he still has the same thing, you've got to go back in the pattern buffer, and it's denying her that life. And I think that the bigger reflection for me in this episode is that him being a prodigy, him being absolute genius of his world, is denying him that life and denying him the future in which he should be having. And it doesn't really indicate, well, I didn't pick up anything where it indicates that every child is like that. And maybe this is someone who is different. That's what I took from the whole genius aspect of it.
Yeah, the two kids are effectively terminal, aren't they? So you don't find out that Kira's her first servant until the very end. So that doesn't become apparent, but it's something that you can reflect on later on. And Mbenga sees that she's missing out on just having fun being a child and things like that. And it's not an immediate problem, but he's getting older. Well, she isn't. So it could be a point where it takes him 20 years to figure out this cure. And then he cures her, and then her dad's now a really old man, and she has to deal with that. You have that thing about he's having difficulty maintaining an actual proper relationship with his daughter because he forgets what passage he read in the book last time. He said, I'm having trouble keeping track. So yeah, there's a really good plot, and the whole idea of the solution getting chucked in his lap. He's so close that these people could cure her no problem. They could do it in an afternoon, but they can't because they're so insular that they don't share their technology with other people. And then the point's made, well, the Federation don't share everything with anybody else. And he said, not when it comes to medical stuff. If someone comes to us with a medical problem, we'll share everything we have. Couldn't you do the same? And the guy's like, nah, it's not our way. Sorry.
Yeah, it's illegal.
And he warms up to it at the end by saying, well, I can't give you the tech, I can't help you here, but I can show you the theory. We can make a start on this. So there is some hope there. I did like that the solution just wasn't given to Mbenga, because it gives a bit of tragedy to it, but also a little bit of hope. Because if you look at any 90s Star Trek thing, you would probably get the introduction of his daughter in one episode, and then at the end of the episode it would be, we just so happen to have met aliens that have a cure. Didn't that all work out nicely? Yeah. You'd very rarely get that real hands are tied here and we can't really do this. I really like that. And I think the Mbenga and his daughter plot is a very good one.
There's only Star Trek Voyager, really, wasn't it? It was all get home. Oh, we found a wormhole, but it goes back in time. And it's only the size of a pencil or something like that.
We found a way home, but it doesn't work. It'll kill us all.
We can jump another 40,000 years. We're getting a little bit closer.
We'll be there eventually. It's fine. Even then, they wrapped up plots pretty neatly by the end. There's one episode of Voyager that I can think of where it didn't have that happy ending. It was the one in season 7 where they managed to cure a prisoner of his murderous tendencies because it turned out he had some brain abnormality that made him a murderer. And they tried to campaign to stop him from being executed, and then they failed. I don't think the episode's very effective at that, but it's one example of not giving you that happy ending. And I think this is a better example of it, certainly in this particular plot, because the political side of things makes this more complicated. It's really stupid because it means that a small child suffers.
Yeah, definitely.
That was all very good. And it even tries to do the doctor-to-doctor thing. And then they set up that, I think his name's Gamal, is a terrorist or a rebel against the society, which they don't do very much of. You don't get enough of a sense of how the society works to understand why are people rebelling against this? They just haphazardly mention there's a colony off somewhere and they don't like what we're up to, so they're trying to stop us. And then the whole, we have to plug in a child every few years to, again, keep the cities afloat or something. I don't know. But we need to do this. Why? Why does it need to be a child? Why every few years? Why does it have to be this child?
Yeah.
Could you do it with any child? I don't know. I just didn't feel like they gave me enough information to understand what they were up to here.
There was a little bit in this where it felt to me there was this discussion on privilege. It seemed to be the planet of privilege, that the breakaway people had decided long ago that this was not within the purview of what they should be doing. It's immoral. And they've left on principle, which I actually quite liked. It reminded me a little bit of Reminiscence, strangely enough, the film Reminiscence. There was a scene where there was a household, it's in the middle of nowhere, and there's a massive dam around them, which is obviously protecting them. And the fact that they're keeping this planet afloat from the lava, and I thought some of the scenes with the lava worked really well, especially the scene where you've got the guard who gets revealed and then they go running, and it gives you those overview god shots and you could see the lava underneath, and I thought that was quite a nice way of portraying that. The way I took it was you're using this one child every few years to maintain your privilege, because every single venue that you saw there was very royal, regal kind of style to it. And I thought that there was something there that could have been delved into a bit more in that kind of privilege aspect of it. The guards are all that royal aspect of it as well. But yeah, I did think that there should have been more play on that, because people have left that. I think she even says it a few times about the opportunities that people have. Everyone relies on this ascension routine to keep everyone where they need to be as well. It's not just a case of this person's an ascension. Do people even know what actually happened to the kid or not? We're not quite sure, because it's quite a sacred thing. But yeah, it just keeps going back to this kind of idea that the people on Prospect 7 have been, over the millennia or however long it would be, that they decided long ago on principle they can't attest to this. And then obviously the very nature that it's his son. And at the beginning it's interesting when he says it's his biological son only by that fact, and that he develops over that episode that says, well, they were willing to try and protect my son. So I found it interesting. It is interesting though, from what you're saying, that we don't get anything really from their side. We don't see anything on their planet. We don't see anything on the ships. They're deliberately kept afar to maintain that mystery in the first half.
Yeah, and then they don't answer it in a satisfying enough way in the second half, really, to give you any context to what's going on here. And I think it was interesting that Gamal was very particular in mentioning that he's father in biology only. It's almost have to maintain that distance because I know what's going to happen to him, so I can't become attached in the way that a father should be attached to a child. And he's dealing with the rebels because he wants to save his son, and Starfleet unwittingly dooms this child because they don't have enough information. Again, that should be much more moving and much more impactful than it is, but it really isn't. And you were saying about the Reminiscence connection. I got a Snowpiercer vibe because the train runs on children. But there's a reason for that. It's because they're small enough to go in and operate the mechanism.
Yeah. Spoiler alert for Snowpiercer.
Well, the movie. I don't know if that's still the case in the TV show. I haven't seen it, but definitely in the movie.
I've only watched the first couple of episodes of the TV show.
But in this, it's why does it need to be a child? Why does it need to be this child? Could it be any child? Could it be an adult even? Could Allura be giving herself up?
They do mention that in context later on, because Allura actually does say that the ancestors, it neurologically has to be a child.
Oh, right, I missed that.
They do actually mention it, but she isn't sure why. The reason why Allura crossed paths with Pike in the first instance is that she's, over her period of time of between the last 10 years, even before that, when they met, she was trying to find a solution to not using the child. So that's what she's been doing for the past 20, 30, 40 years of trying to find a way. But even she doesn't know why the ancestors have deliberately gone for the neurological aspect of a child.
Okay, I missed that. Again, it's still not clear. Why does it have to be a child? It just does, apparently.
Yeah, it's left to the ancestors.
We just decided this years ago and we're going to operate on that principle. No one's really asked the question in a long time, but we're stuck on this now. We're just going to keep doing this, I think. We'll just keep doing this.
Yeah. It is interesting, though, that we only get that from Allura in a single or two lines of dialogue rather than anything else. We don't really get anything other than that. And then pretty quickly after that, she's talking about the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one kind of thing. So it is interesting. I know we'll get there. I will leave it till then, but Pike's reaction is certainly interesting.
Yeah, well, this is another opportunity for me to get on a soapbox because it's doing some commentary here. Allura talking about, well, does your society turn a blind eye to the suffering of children or the suffering of people in order to maintain it? Does your society viewer turn a blind eye to the suffering of people in order to maintain your privilege? Can you really stand in judgment of us? The difference here is we acknowledge it. We take account of it. We understand the suffering and we don't hide from it. And she shows Pike, tells him the truth because she respects him in that way, and she's regretful about it, but there's no other way, apparently. They couldn't just move to another planet where they don't have to kill children. They couldn't apparently do that.
But that's giving up all their privilege,
Yes.
though. I think that's the point.
Yeah, but the commentary is pretty half-baked, though, because, it's obvious that we live in even where we live, we're not part of the rich elite. Well, I'm definitely not. I don't know about you, but I'm definitely not one of the rich elite in society. But even then, we're effectively standing on the shoulders of people that prop it up, in the sense that the clothes we wear are made under unethical conditions in a lot of cases. The chips in our phone, they're unethically sourced. All that stuff. There's loads of contradictions in society that we just have to ignore in order to live our lives, because otherwise it would horrify you to the point of being unable to function. You wouldn't be able to live ethically in this society. And The Good Place did a really good job of making that point when that was on. The whole idea of it's impossible to be 100% righteous. It's just impossible.
Yeah.
Because there's always someone suffering in order to make you live the way that you do. That's the point she's making.
I would definitely say if I was of that privilege, then I would definitely have air conditioning in this room, and I don't.
Operated by a small child, and it has to be a small child.
Operated by a small child, yeah, absolutely.
Powering the unit is a small child riding a bike that powers the generator for your air conditioning.
Yeah, and of course they would be on the wall outside, so everyone can see it.
I don't turn a blind eye to the suffering of this child that makes my life better. Yeah.
Exactly.
And neither do you.
Might give him some crackers at some point. I'll have to do that. I'll have to have a break in a minute and go and give him some crackers.
Yeah. So I appreciated what it was trying to say there, but it didn't really do enough with it. And then Pike having no choice but to just leave. And then leave her to it and leave them to it, because it's not their problem. And that's the problem with the non-interference directive that they brought up once and have hinted at. This is a prime directive issue, as in they became involved when the Enterprise was attacked, when they saved people and so on. And then they became involved because she asked them to be involved. And then at the end, it was, oh, well, he's already plugged in, so we can't unplug him because that'll kill him.
Yeah, and I did like, as much as it's horrible and horrendous, I did like the way that it's left like that, because you can have this idea of everything is going to be all right in the end, or everything's wrapped up in a bow. And this one clearly isn't. But at the same time, it's, as you say, it's their world. The Enterprise has only been brought in because it was fired upon 3 times. And that part of the story has been sorted and dealt with, and they found out exactly what's been going on. And they haven't really affected the natural course of that. But they can have an absolutely altruistic and very clear emotional stance, a political stance on what they're doing. And then they can maybe supply pressure to them. But as she says, we're not part of the Federation. And I think stuff like that is the stuff that I really want from New Trek. It's things like that, these clear dividing lines that you can't break down. And how do you manage that? How do you sleep at night thinking about things like that? I just like the way it kind of left you with an imperfect cadence, to term a musical term, where you're not going to get the final note of the song. You're just going to be left ready for the crescendo and you don't ever get it. And I like that. I like being left with, there's nothing we can do here. I don't think that worked really effectively in this episode and notched it up a couple of points for me.
I liked it conceptually, but I didn't like the execution. I wanted more from it.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that.
The thing about, are people suffering to give you your privilege in the Federation? And Pike doesn't answer the question. Well, I don't know. I don't know if the Federation is built on contradictions, or if there's people out there struggling. You get it in Deep Space Nine, where it's out in the demilitarized zone, it's far from perfect, but it's still the Federation, and they're just kind of ignoring that. So you have to imagine something similar happens in the 23rd century. And if this were an original series episode, and if it was Kirk would be like, I've decided your society sucks, so we're going to change that. And then he would leave, and God knows what state he would leave it in. That's where you get the 23rd century equivalent of the Cerritos coming in to clean up after Kirk has ruined a society or changed the course of a society. So could have done so much more there. But in theory, I like the notion of the bittersweet ending, and it gives you an opportunity for maybe Pike to question Federation protocol rubbing up against his own values, because he knows this to be wrong, but Starfleet will back him when he says, I had to leave, because it's not our problem.
Yeah, and I think that works in that regard. Not all problems have a solution, and you can think what you want to think, and you can have your opinion on something, and that's very much what they were trying to get at. The idea that she has her side of the argument, and Pike doesn't agree with it. The only thing that I didn't really quite get is pondering out into the star at the end. That could have been left to have something else there. And I suppose it goes back to the point of this was like 50 minutes. The variation in times, you could have rejigged this, redrafted a little bit to have those conversations rather than just leave it. Yes, it was a bittersweet ending, but him looking into the star in front of him, it could have been better in my eyes.
Yeah, I think we need more Magellan culture, really, because we only, as you say, saw the elite. We only saw the upper echelon. We don't see how the other half live. So we don't see how that colony live.
No.
We don't know anything about them. And we don't even know how the people outside of the palaces or whatever they were in live, because you would have to assume there's a lower echelon of society on that planet that aren't quite as well off. So they needed to do that more. And that's where someone like Uhura comes in, because that's her thing. She's going to go there and she's going to learn the language and she's going to get a sense of who these people are. So maybe that's a better thing for Uhura to be doing in this episode rather than hanging about with a character we already know pretty well compared to other characters.
Yeah, and again, I think in that first half, there's definitely room to be able to understand the culture more. There's definitely room for improvement there.
Yeah, for sure. It's just a bit of a confused episode for me.
Yeah, definitely.
But some interesting ideas, and they need to beef up how they explore these ideas, which is, I guess, a problem with the episodic format, as in we need to deal with this in 50 minutes or however long it is. We don't quite know how to end things necessarily.
But I do like what they're trying to do is have the episode reflect on the character arcs. I like that idea, and I think there is definitely stuff in there for them to be able to do that. There is definitely, looking at Mbenga's child and the reflection of the first servant, there's definitely stuff that Pike can see through others. I don't think it's done effectively here. There's room for Uhura to have stuff like that, but it found itself stuck between a story in an episodic format with some great ideas and couldn't really marry the two. That's the way I feel with it. I think that's probably the cohesion that it's missing, really. It had this story, it had this mystery box storytelling at the beginning. Who is the person in the wrong? Because there's moments in this where you get Uhura when they're looking at the damaged ship and they say, have you seen anything like this? Which is the head thing for the first servant. And her reaction is, oh, she definitely knows something's wrong here. And then she sees the coin. And then you've got the doctor saying stuff like, it's only my child biologically. So there's all these hints that something's happening, something's going wrong. And I enjoyed the ride the first time round. I enjoyed going, right, there's something wrong. What's happening with her? She's done this. He said that. And this is happening. And there's room for going through that. But the first half, when you find out what the story is, feels lacking because it spent too much time on that mystery and not enough time in the deeper conversations that they have towards the back end of the episode. I think that's where it falls down.
Yeah. The situation was kind of similar to the Voyager episode 30 Days, the one with the ocean planet. And you got a better sense of, we know this is wrong for them to continue mining this planet because it won't exist for much longer. You got a stronger sense of they believe that this is wrong, but there's nothing they can do because of the way that Tom Paris took it upon himself to destroy their oxygen extractor, whatever it was, in order to prompt them to redesign it while they were repairing it. So he took it upon himself to protect this rare and unique thing, and Janeway had to stop him because it wasn't their place to do it. So you got a clear indication of, we get that this is wrong, and here's someone that's willing to put their career on the line in order to right that wrong, and Janeway has to be the bad guy, quote unquote, because that's the oath she took, that's the values that they live by. And I don't know how they could have done it here. They could have maybe done something similar. Again, you need a character that really sympathises with them, which is Pike, but he's the captain, so no one's going to say, we're going to stop you doing this. Unless number one decides, nah, I'm going to have to mutiny against you. I don't agree with the fact that you're trying to fix this society. It's not our place, that kind of thing. You probably needed something like that. You probably needed an oppositional force to make the point of, this isn't Starfleet's problem. As difficult as it ain't our problem. And they didn't really do that. Like I say, it just peters out, I think, and doesn't really dig into what it's trying to say, or doesn't really know what it's trying to say, because it doesn't deliver its commentary until that one speech really at the end. Yeah,
I'm just going through my notes now, and there's moments I picked up where there seems to be a lot of ideas and don't really dive into them. So there's a moment where they attack the Enterprise, and little dog with the most to prove is the comment that Pike makes. And they fired and changed course into the weapons. It was kind of like those kamikaze suicide missions, the belief of the people who have left the planet and gone to Providence 7.
The colony.
The colony will be fine. Not the radicalism of them, but they are willing to give up their fight to actually jump in and actually make the Enterprise get involved, because it felt to me there was a moment where they're doing that on purpose to get the Enterprise involved. There's things like that happen. And also when Allura talks about getting into a lot of shuttle accidents, and they kind of were talking a little bit there about the point of view is important, how people perceive stuff is important. So there's moments and there's little tidbits of information right through the episode where you can see the ideas are there, but they're just not really developed enough. Those are two moments that I've noted down there, the radicalism of the people, the colonists who've moved away. So there's moments like that which I think could have been better developed as well.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of missed opportunities, I think. And that's my biggest problem with this episode. There's a lot of things it could have done and it didn't really do most of them. I liked the Uhura and Land stuff, and the Mbenga stuff was great. That was the strongest parts of it for me. But the main plot and Pike's role just left a lot to be desired, I think. I think there was some issues there. They could have really done more with it. And a lot of it is down to the portrayal of Magellan culture, as in there isn't much of a portrayal of Magellan culture. You don't get too much of it. It's almost the Planet of Hats thing, isn't it? You only deal with the elected officials or the leaders of this thing, and you don't really branch out beyond that, which is a classic Star Trek thing.
We were definitely Magellan culture averse.
I don't really have much more to say about this. I've exhausted all my notes, more or less.
I'll have a look, see what I've got. Is Prospect 7 is the planet I was trying to think of. No, I don't think there's anything else that I can see in my notes that I've got that's really jumping out at me.
Cool. In that case, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at rmuldrake. It's RMULDRAKE. I'm currently going through season 8 of The X-Files as of time recording with my fellow showrunners Carl Sweeney and Sarah Blair. That's the X_cast. If you wanted to find out what I'm up to, I've got Red Dwarf podcasts, I've got Yellow Jacket podcasts and all kinds. The best thing to do is go onto my Twitter account, and in the bio it'll have all the information about which Twitter handles I have there, and my Twitter feed will give an indication of what I'm doing on any given day. So that's the best place to find me.
There you go. Cool. Succinct. I can be mainly found on Neil Before Blog. That's neilbeforeblog.co.uk, or Facebook and Twitter. Just type it in. I review Strange New Worlds, The Flash, Superman and Lois. I'll be doing The Boys and some other stuff. There's an attached podcast called Neil Before Pod. We recently released our Picard Season 2 podcast, so if you haven't heard enough of the people on this network talking about it, listen to two other white guys complain about Star Trek Picard, because there's not enough of that on the internet. So listen to that.
I haven't yet, but I will.
And we've got an episode on Doctor Strange coming up whenever I can get around to editing it. Did the Moon Knight podcast, so all sorts of listening there that you can do. And personally, I'm under Nemesis4909 on Twitter, which I'm obliged to point out I have to do it. It's a societal requirement. We don't know why that is. We've searched for other ways, but we can't find them, so I'm just going to keep doing it. But it started life as a Resident Evil reference, and then later became a Star Trek reference as well once Nemesis was released. So there we go. That is my fulfillment done.
Excellent. It's always nice to hear your contractual obligations, Craig.
It is, and I go back and forth. I get sick of doing it, and then I eventually look back round to, I really love doing this. If you want to hear more of what's on the We Made This network, the Twitter handle is, what is it now? W Made This?
I honestly can't keep up. Let's have a look. We_made this.
There we go. That's what it is.
It's the Twitter account. We_made this.
But otherwise, just type it into your podcast catcher of choice and all sorts of stuff will come up. But everything will be funneled through that Twitter account. And if you want to get a sense of what else is going on in the network, stick around and you'll be able to hear a few other tidbits of shows also found on the network. But until next time on We Are Starfleet, hit it.
Elsewhere on We Made This.
Make it so. A Star Trek Picard podcast.
Why? Why do you even need to bring that up? You don't. We've done a story, and you're just using that for the. Oh, God! No, it's like, no. I don't get it. I understand it. I understand Soongs are always going to be in some way related to the Kang story because of genetics and the stuff like that they've done. I get it, but to do that, and if it comes in season 3, if it's a main thing in season 3, then I'll hold judgment. If it doesn't get mentioned in season 3, then what was the point?
Pick a disc.
desk.
Guardian reading lefty, which
yeah, a bleeding heart is one of the phrases we use a lot here in the US. Like, he cares about the homeless.
Yeah,
I'm sort of shifting into my Limbo impersonation. Oh, he wants to house the homeless. What is he, a communist? Like, that's not. Maybe a little, but he's concerned with this. He's concerned with climate change. He's concerned with poverty. He's concerned with just general treatment of your fellow human beings. Like, I'm sure he resents having been subjected to trauma in his own life, and that gives him a great deal of sympathy, which I think is a good quality.
Third one, are the following names of hops US space shuttles or both?
Brilliant.
First one, Atlantis.
No, it's a US space shuttle, but is it a hop? I'm going to say it's just a US space shuttle.
Correct.
Good.
I didn't.
Have I got to get best of three again?
Yeah, I didn't know that was a space shuttle. Well, that's my poor knowledge. That is. Second one, Galaxy.
I know that's a hop because I've seen it in a pub recently. I don't know if it's a space shuttle, so I'm going to say both.
Just a hop, that one.
Oh, damn it.
Next one, Endeavour.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.